Hi, and welcome to the Holistic Hub with Marie and Martine, a welcoming, nurturing, and soul supporting environment of all things spiritual, energy, and alternative. Our intention is to freely and lovingly share the personal truths, stories, or wisdoms we've gained, hopefully offering any guidance, new perspective, or light bulb moment that you may wish to take away to assist you through your navigation of the journey out of 3D, through 4D, and toward 5D and beyond.
Hey, and welcome to episode 13 of the Holistic Hub. We are here with you today on the 7th of the 12th, 2022, about to launch into another big full moon and on the precipice of the 12/12. Today, we're going to dive into the path of trust, as this moon's very much about trust and forgiveness. I'm going to hand you over to Marie for a moment so that she can share with you the current energetic updates. And then we're both going to share our experiences and our path of trust in the last few weeks. Hey, Marie.
Hello. Hi, how are you? Hello, everybody. Firstly, we just wanted to say we didn't do an episode last week. It just wasn't meant to be. Everyone's doing their thing. And so here we are today. But yeah, today's a big, powerful, we're all powerful. Everything's powerful now. I mean, we keep saying the same thing, but this is another big full moon, and it's our last full moon of 2022. So this one for me, I don't know about any of you, but I've certainly felt the energies of it starting as I do, well ahead of the moon phase. But as a Scorpio, I have a big Mars in my chart, and Mars is blocked out on this particular moon. So Mars is feeling the impact, and I believe it's retrograde, but this is not my forte, and I don't go there. But when I quickly had a look for myself what it was reflecting this moon, it made a lot of sense to me, because the themes for me with my groups and clients, and even with Martine and I, and she'll discuss her stuff soon that I'll throw back to, has been all about the lesson of trust and forgiveness, and what those levels of trust are, what we're being propelled into. And what I've learned too in my journey aspect of the trust, it's very much about the relationship factor with people around us. Is there anyone that we need to really forgive? Is there anyone that we need to apologize to? Is there anyone that we need to receive an apology from? There's a lot of this relationship aspect to take us further into the heart, to take us further out of our ego, into just cleaning the slates, clearing the debris, the past, so that we can move forward, whether it be ourselves or whether it be some of those beings that we've just discussed with. But whether it be whoever presents around you. And I know Martine's going to speak from her perspective, which is not in the human form, but it's still in a soul form, that we've all got these avenues of trust that on some level I feel everybody's had to work through, if not the last week, the last couple of days, and even in the next few days, 2 weeks coming. So again, I think this is that shift, not only from that perspective, but that trust layer is taking us in preparation for 2023, because we are going to be amplified more. Those of us that are really structuring our crystalline formats and matrices and really have the contract to move forward, we're going to be propelling ourselves via our higher self into greater levels of trust. So this is getting our little feet wet, if not deeper into the muck of mire, to really see what we are, find those strengths of the divine masculine us, the divine feminine, and begin to bring that beautiful, while we might be seeing the outward relationship, they are always the mirror of the inward relationship that we're aiming to be in, that beautiful alchemical marriage ultimately of our divine masculine and feminine. So all these lessons, all these beautiful mirrors and teachers come to us for us to go deeper within into that process of who we are, deeper into our heart space, to simply be, to learn to be still, and to learn to trust what we get, and to decipher and discern between what is the fear and what is the heart and the truth message that we're getting. So that's where I feel the moon is. We're coming up to the 12/12, another big portal. We're in the big portal now, right through to the 21st of the 12th. And I've said for 6 months, I have felt this solstice is going to be a big game changer. I can feel this propulsion of energy that when we move through that, there's going to be, whether it's conscious or we're just going to feel it and it's going to be unique to us, which it always is, but there will be another amplification after this solstice on the 21st. So keep on keeping on. Keep sitting with it. Don't watch what you're saying to yourself. Watch your words. Watch the harshness to yourself. Start bringing in those beautiful words of temperance and allowance and nurturance, and call on your divine feminine for that, to have that faith within you, to listen to that. So then we give the courage to that divine masculine in us to take the steps required that may not make sense, may not feel right to the ego within us, but are absolutely of the divine path that we're meant to be walking, and the grace that we'll discover through that walk. So that's about it for me, I feel, and I'll just hand the ball back to Martina.
I feel it necessary to express the nature of portals as well. Like, we've just come out of like an 11/11 portal as we move closer to the 12/12 portal, and the frequencies and the energies often are really different. Even if you just attune yourself to those frequencies, you'll energetically feel the difference in them. The undercurrent theme that I feel like portals bring in, and portals to me are just a fancy way of saying an energy frequency that connects us in a way that doesn't happen every other day of the year. And so this 12/12 portal for me represents a time when a lot of stuff kind of occurs as if you're a fly on the wall watching it. It's as if everything that is aligned to the frequency that you've been emanating is in front of you, and it's aligning up to you. And whether or not that you're doing that in a way that is conscious or whether that's subconscious, it most likely will be a combination, because remember that where focus goes, energy flows. And Marie and I talk about this consistently, where we talk about how, what you're focusing on is creating the energy of the future, is creating the next day, is creating your outcomes. And so the portals are a combination of that, but they're also a combination of this divine alignment, to be showing you and opening you to frequencies and energy fields that you're destined to be aligned to. It's just whether or not in that portal time you fight it or you embrace it. And so for me, that's what I feel like the biggest energy of the portals emanates. Have you got anything else to add about the portals before I go into story time?
No, I think it's a nice explanation too. And I mean, there's these big terms. We use portals and gateholes and gateways, and yeah. You can give them any name you want, but it is all about energy. That's all it is. And I mean, even if we're looking at the sun, our sun, we look at the suns up to the great central sun. They are all portals. This sun that we have above us is a portal. It's just an energetic gateway. It's an energetic out expression of the Creator that we're already in connection to in truth, but we're just having this journey of remembrance to that truth. And all these energies aren't something you have to achieve. You already are them. It's just the understanding as your consciousness is ready into that remembrance and into that, true alignment again. And with that alignment comes all the wondrous gifts and skills that you are. All knowledge is yours anyway. It's not you don't know anything. It's not that you're less than or people know more than you ever. Please step out of those comparisons. That's an ego trap in itself. But it's just the journey of how you've chosen to wake up. But as Martine said, we have this, this incredible consciousness we've all created, ego, which is one of our greatest teachers to embrace. And yeah, with that voice and our old memories, that's what throws up our resistance, because we've all had it, we've all got it, whatever that is. And the more power that we're ready to step up into, that's when we feel those resistance pathways move through us, that sort of we do the push pull, the contraction expansion, and that's the journey into the understanding of that. And that, simply put, is all it is. But what we give to it becomes how big it becomes.
And I think also when we talk about these times being big and big and big, and every time we say this, it's because
no, it feels like it's forever we're saying it's like, yeah, it's big.
Oh, it's even bigger this week. Oh, this week's intense. And it's simply because, again, where it's more that, again, Marie and I aren't necessarily spring chickens. We've walked on our journey for a while now, and we've seen how in previous times it hasn't been as accelerated. It's kind of, I always liken it to you used to have the ability to just look under rocks and choose whether or not you were going to actually work on that particular catalyst or that particular value or that particular
mirror,
past issue or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And now you don't have really much of a choice, because the acceleration of these frequencies that you on some level have aligned to wanting to move forward into and you've consented to are what continue to raise things. And so we have a choice. We have a choice on whether or not we want to actually align to that frequency in struggle or whether we want to align to that frequency in surrender.
Yeah.
And it's, I even said this to my daughter yesterday. I said, I picked her up from school. I said, I need to go to the post office. And she goes, do you need to or do you want to? And I went, oh, yes, she's got it. Well, I did promise a client that I was going to post this today. So I, in my values, feel like we need to. And she said to me, yes, but it's still your choice. And I went, this is amazing. I tried to contain my excitement, but I was very proud of her in this moment for having this capacity of understanding that everything that she does is a choice.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, have you got anything else that you'd like to add on that before?
No, just throw in there the last couple of words, which are so well known and they're out there everywhere, that, the more we resist, the more it persists. That's the truth.
Yeah. Yeah. And, what I wanted to share with you today, Marie and I, like, what do you want to talk about? I think we had something planned that we were going to talk about last week, but last week we didn't go ahead with it. And then she said, oh, well, I think we were going to talk about chakras or something. I don't really feel aligned to that. And she mentioned about the moon and the frequent night. And I'd already felt this journey that I'd been on, which is a really massive path of trust, was something that I wanted to chat to you guys about today. And, I have to say, like, I feel like my journeys these days, they're not tumultuous like they were when they're not tumultuous like when I was in my 20s or even when I was in my 30s. I don't feel like I have these great reaping events that feel like they uproot me or make me feel unsafe or any of those things that perhaps I used to align to. A lot of the unfolding of my life is still very organic. And it's because I feel personally like I've taken time and I've chosen to lifestyle my life around being able to hear my inner voice, being able to hear and trust that every step that I'm making feels like it's a good step to make. It's a very rare thing for me that I feel like I'm off path too far. Like, previously I feel like it would take me maybe a few days to come back, or even a few weeks, sometimes even a few months. It feels like I'm not off kilter for very long if I happen to even move to off kilter, or even if I feel off kilter, I'm still very conscious and in alignment and in my love center. So this journey that I've had the last few weeks is that we've been looking after our very first foster, and our first foster fur baby, that is. And she came to us just as like a last minute call. We need someone. Are you available? And I just immediately, without even questioning it, I sat with it for a millisecond and it felt right in all of my cells. And I just said yes. So we went and picked this little one up and brought her home. And the story is that her mum had passed in childbirth, and all the puppies that had survived were passed on to people that I think the owner knew, and this one was surrendered to a shelter for, because they didn't obviously want to take care of it or couldn't or whatever reason. We'll never know. And so I got the privilege of having this little soul live in my world for just over 3 weeks. And boy, when you go and pick something up, you've really got no idea how much a soul has the capacity to transform your world. I understand that, the impact that a butterfly can have as they move past you, or I understand the impact that a sunset can have. I understand the impact that someone who smiles at you at Woolworths can have. But when you embody it on another level again, it's very soul touching and very beautiful. And this journey, in short, that I've been on with Addie has been one of complete trust, because we fell in love with her immediately. And anyone who knows me knows how much I love animals, and can't, like, have a very huge soft spot for, being almost an advocate for animals on planet Earth. And so, I'm feeding her all of the amazing things and doing everything that I was told not to by giving homeopathics and things like that. And when I messaged them about everything that I'd done, I was in full disclosure about that. And they were like, yeah, we knew you were going to, like, that was a given. But we probably can't share that with the owners, that kind of thing. But what's been a big journey for me in this is this trust, because obviously when you fall in love with something, you want to keep it. And it's this journey that I've gone on, of which isn't a new journey. There's been many people that have come into my life in the last few years, who no longer cease to be in my world for whatever reason as well. And it's this real trust that right now is all that matters. In the moment is what matters. And whether someone stays or goes is really none of my business. It's part of the soul contract. It's part of the alignment to the frequency. It's part of whatever your job was to do. And there were some really amazing things that happened while Addie was with me. The first night she stayed in her little thing that they'd given me as part of it. And then the second night I kept the door open, and her and my other little dog Skylar were down there together, and they just hung down there. And then slowly but surely, this little thing was creeping closer into my heart, and we all came upstairs into the bed at one night. And on the first night that she slept in my bed, we did these massive light code activations. I could feel them happening between us. And I could see in the next morning, I just woke up really blown away by what had happened between this little one and me. And I sat with it the next few days. I was like, what was that about? And, on one level, you can understand, if you're a foster carer, the job that you're doing is setting a really beautiful foundation. And I understood the foundation that I was setting was one that wasn't just based on sharing, nurturing, and caring for this little one, but it was one that was based on mutual unconditional love. It wasn't just me showing this little one unconditional love. It was me receiving unconditional love on a grand scale from this one on another level. And how many people can actually honestly say, that they're able to both receive and give unconditional love, to anyone, anything on a regular basis? This is something that feels to me like it was an absolute heart opening, into the vibration of compassion, into the vibration of unconditional love, and one that, meant that I couldn't hold on to it, because my path of trust here is that I'm constantly checking in. So I'm constantly sort of saying, and I always look up when I ask, so is she meant to be in our family? And I kept getting very strong, no, she will be she is aligned and destined to another family. This is your job. And so these activation of the light codes, I knew, were partly to do with the fact that then she would be carrying these light codes with her, and then that would be a natural emanation onto every single person, every single thing that she touched. But the big journey for me personally was this surrendering to that trust that that earthly part of me, the human part of me that wants to rescue, wants to save, wants to hold on, all of these parts that felt like, to me, I was understanding on another level, were still layers of my control, were still layers of me trying to force an outcome, trying to, like when I would peel everything back. So when I was peeling anything back on any given day, do we keep her? Like, what's happening? And it would always come back down to this place of inner knowing of, no, not right now. And no, she this is her journey, and me coming back down to clearing whatever that had raised in me. So whether that raised like, for the first few weeks, it was raising the fact that I couldn't control who she was going to. So that's out of my control. I can't control how that happens. And in the last few days, it was the fact that she has to go back to the shelter until she gets adopted. And so I was having to surrender this transition time and work on that energetically. One of the other ones that I was working on was the fact that she had to get sex. So I had to take her to the vet to do something that doesn't align with me. And what I've like had to then pull out in order for me to sit with her the day before and pull out all my fear and pull out anything that I was aligning to, because I didn't want her going in with that, and I didn't want her going in with any of these lower vibrations. And I guess the key here is that anytime that we carry any of these energies with us, we're not only imprinting those around us with that frequency, but we're putting that on them as well. And that was my leverage. My leverage right there was that, well, no, I'm not letting her take that on, because I could feel how energetically willing she was to play whatever game that I was ready to play. And it was me choosing to step up into a frequency that didn't want to play any games, just wanted to come at it from a complete way of unconditional love. And I feel like there were a lot of moves, like the one with the hospital, feel like I nailed that. The time that I got triggered was when she came out and I saw the stitches, and here I am thinking that new science would be all laparoscopic and, but she had like 5 solid stitches on this little tiny, teeny abdomen. I just burst out in tears. And in that moment, I was bursting out in tears because I was like, my human part was like, she's 9 weeks old. This is too young. I don't feel comfortable at the fact that she's been neutered. I don't feel comfortable with the fact that, this little one has had anything change to her physically. There were all these things that came up that brought all my grief up. But simultaneously, my grief was up perfectly for me to be processing and releasing. Earlier that day, I'd had a kinesiology session with a friend of mine, and we'd worked a lot on my spleen energy, and my spleen energy that was holding and harboring any lack of sweetness within all aspects of my life. And I felt where it was holding the lack of sweetness, and I tuned into that and was surrendering that on another level. So these tears and this role that Addie was playing in that exact moment, not an hour later after I'd finished that session, were in divine alignment with her being able to trigger in me the release, which, and I ended up calling Marie that day. And I said to her, oh, I'm struggling a little bit today. I'm really struggling. And Marie also then pointed out, well, it could also be a past life that you had a hysterectomy. Do you think that there's a potential that you're grieving something like that? And I had to go away and sit with that. And there's endless possibilities to every single response that we have. And it's whether or not we choose to really delve into those on a beautiful frequency dynamic, or whether we just pass them to the side. Even as today, the completion of that Addie journey was that then we handed her back to the shelter this morning. And as we're driving away, we pulled over onto the side of the road so that my daughter and I could have a little hug and let it all out. And, we both did a prayer in that moment. And in that prayer, we cut our cords with Addie. We cut our cords of any fear around anything happening to her, any attachment to the fact that, we think we could do better, or any of those, whatever was kind of there that could potentially block any frequency from coming in and aligning her to the highest frequency. And the work that we did before was boundless as well. Like, you know, before, when we were driving out of the carport, I said, okay, align violet flame to our house, align it to her, and she will know that she can tune in. And I felt her tune in. She's had these little snippets of what's happening, and I've just tuned in at that moment. I felt it, and I've just sent her love, and she's immediately calmed down. And as default, so have I. I'm trusting that just because I don't know what's going to happen doesn't mean that it's not all going to be perfect.
Yeah.
So it's been a big journey. And, you know, I know that other people have many other big journeys and many other things that are occurring in their life. And, you know, for some, they may be experiencing, you know, massive journeys of physical health, massive journeys of the losing of loved ones, massive journeys of a number of different things that can come up. And I'm not liking this situation, any of them. I'm more just sharing with you the beauty that I see in opportunities for aligning to what I like to call the highest frequency. And I'm always searching for that highest frequency. Always.
Yeah. And that's all we're being asked to do. You know, every presentation, Martine and I were speaking a bit earlier, and we had our good chat this week with Addie. But, you know, Martine knows me, and many of you do, and some of you are getting to know me. But I always and will always and intend always to guide people towards that highest truth. That the highest truth is that the physical presentation is not what the truth is really all about. Every perceived, tricky, difficult, sad, hard, whatever word we want to give it, controlling, whatever name we call it, whatever label box we put it in, everything is an opportunity. If we have that consciousness, willingness, and awareness to be the eagle, to fly higher, to detach enough from our wounded state, our pain, that moment of perceived darkness, however that depth is, to step back in that truest form of self and essence that we are, to see what's on offer. Because the further you walk on this journey, the longer the path, the more willing you are to move towards your highest possible outcome. If that's enough, great, or toward 5D, to whatever, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. It's about what you wish for yourself. But that movement back to the heart requires you to always be steering your attention and consciousness back towards the heart and the qualities that are of the heart, which is ultimately faith and trust. And they are the two most difficult energies for us to leave our consciousness of ego and control and to really surrender. Now, a lot of people think they surrender, and that's great, because we have to learn that as well, because you just don't truly surrender like that. It's an ongoing process that you realize where you think you surrendered and you realize you didn't really surrender, because you still had not the trust you thought you had, or you still had some attachments of how you thought that might end up, because that's how you wanted it to be, because ego wanted to still remain safe and okay. But dabbling your toe in the water is perfect, because if you don't dabble, you don't know. So the path back to the heart of faith and trust is daring to be brave and courageous enough to the self to try. And if it fails at first, that's okay too. The key in that moment is don't berate yourself. Don't use the old energies of knocking yourself down and putting yourself down back into the box you were daring to jump from with that old imbalanced feminine and masculine within you, that's where they will take you. But the higher parts of the heart will say, come on, love is your answer. Love is the way forward. And love is how we learn to dare to take a step and to validate. We'll get the validation, but to pat ourselves on the back if we do manage to take that step. And we'll always be gifted. We will always receive when we've dared to move through a fear or out of an old pattern of control or fear-based behavior. And every time we walk through it and we say, wow, we survived, we're okay, and it is going to be okay, we can take another step and we get bigger in them and we do them more and more often until we learn more and more into the art of surrender. Surrender is a really difficult path, and surrender and trust go hand in hand for me. You can't do one without the other. You have to say, I am willing to release. I am willing to let go, as Martine said, those parts of you that you discover by going within and daring to look, that you can see are the cords constricting the greater picture. Because in every moment, whoever's presenting, be it an animal, a person, whatever, again, it doesn't matter. There's no right or wrong, good or better, bad or worse. It's just the presentation that both souls, regardless, have chosen for that moment. And the beautiful thing of Addie, because, the animals are fourth dimension plus. They're on a higher vibration to third dimension always before we start waking and we come into their alignment. But they're coming with a purity. They're not coming with karma. They're coming in that unconditional love aspect like a brand new baby does. And so their light is drawing to us. It's offering us. It's mirroring to us the gifts. And so that great gift that Martine spoke of, that we spoke of, was that remembering where controls are and what is the true contract of you both in that moment. That where is Addie meant to be? Who is she meant to be with? What are you meant to be doing in your journey, your role, your moment? What is that greater picture? And I mean, in that moment too, Addie could be seen like a child. It's the same with our children. We have contracts, and I know we spoke about this in a previous episode briefly, that we have contracts with our children the same, those of us that do, grandchildren, nieces, anyone, we have soul contracts. It could be the child next door. You just don't know who you're contracted to. But in that same perspective, from an adult to a child role, and it doesn't even have to be related in this instance, an ego perspective is from the adult, I know better. I know what the answers are. I know how it works. I know society. I know this. We're programmed to these old patterns. But that's not necessarily what the soul wants. And a lot of what ego thinks it needs and what it should be doing is actually contradictory to what the souls are actually come to do. And what is the true betterment of the soul that is the co-creator with you. The biggest trust path, and if we're on the story of trust, and I'm not going to go into the depths of this, but my biggest trusting moment, which, I've had many of them, and like Martine said, I've been on this path a long time. And I have pushed myself in daring to see who I truly am. So to do that, I have to look at all my stuff. We have to. But the biggest teacher for me was my middle daughter. And it was in the situation where she was going through her mental health issues. And I know she's given me permission to speak about this in the past, because I was actually going to write another book, which hasn't happened, but another story. But she took my soul to the depths of clearance through her physical walk that was such mirrors and such fear that was being raised in me, that it was to a point where it was for her suicide. And a nurse told me at the mental health institution, and me being an ex-nurse, she said to me, ethically, I cannot do this, but I know that I must. Now, here's another trusting moment. She broke protocol to say to me, as a soul-to-soul, mother-to-mother, I'm telling you this because I just feel you need to know. And so she gave me the date that my daughter had given the medical practitioner. In that moment, it was, I can't even describe it. It was surreal. It was like time stood still. I was just supernumerary to this illusion of where I was standing. I heard her voice. I saw her. I took it in. I had nothing. It was neutrality for I don't know how long. Time just didn't happen. And then it started to kick through in time as we went out and she came out. And I knew I couldn't speak. I knew that this was my journey. I just knew it. It wasn't to be just, I couldn't discuss it with her because then it would come back and she'd lose trust in whatever everyone. And I just knew that wasn't to be. I knew I wasn't to speak it to my husband. I knew I wasn't to speak it to anybody. And I sat with it for some time. I believe there's really only one person I might have said anything to, and that was probably when I was getting close to the date. And I sat with it and I toed and froed. I went deep because it was a lot. Her mirrors were a lot about my personal moments of my postnatal depression, my moments of suicidalization, probably in the past of lives and when I've been institutionalized, whatever else was coming up. There was so much coming up for me on offer to release, simply to rebalance those vibrations and let go within me. That was the greatest teaching. But it did get to the day before the day of the day. And it was like a movie scene. I remember going up, I'd had many prayers to God, many prayers, putting it out there, again, not speaking. And I went up to the top of, I can't even think of the beach now. It's the one back from Diggers in Coffs Harbour. But anyway, we're up on the headland. I was up on the headland. And it was just like this wild day. And literally, there was no one up there. The winds were crazy. And I stood on the edge of that cliff face. And I remember I was being battered by the wind. And I thought, fine, rip me to shreds, rip my energies, take them, clear me, do whatever wind, through my fields, clear everything out that I don't want. And on that moment, I plea bargained, my last plea bargain to God. And I remember saying, I had to push myself to this point. This was my soul. And I said, I'd come to a place then of peace all of a sudden where I just felt okay. I said, I know. And this was me, I believe, and I know in you absolutely that whatever is in highest divine order is in highest divine order. And if it is your will that she is now ready to leave, that's not my will, but that's not my call. And if her contract is to go, I allow this now. I allow all to take place at the highest level. I allow it with not a string attached. And I meant my truth. I felt that truth. And I really, in my heart, knew that was my truth in that moment. And I cut those cords and I surrendered all and I let it go. I let her go. But what I got in that moment was my heart just instantly showing me that I had surrendered, that I had truly meant what I said. And obviously, there were no cords of control around that because I felt such joy. I felt such a sense of peace permeate every cell of my being. And I felt uplifted that my head of ego is going, how could this be? But I let it go because I knew here that this was just right. And I just trusted in that. And I just went home and thought it is what it is. And I knew that I'd loved unconditionally to the best of my ability. I had no regrets. I had nothing to hold her potential soul opportunity back. So the day came and went and nothing happened. And she remained and still has and actually just grew from that moment, shifted and changed. But what was interesting when I went back was I sat on my lounge in my house then, and I cried. I cried and released and released and released and released. And then, as spirit used to do to me back then, they would direct me to the phone, to the computers, and this was how I would link to things. God knows why, but that was the path. And I just kept getting the message, pick up your phone, pick up your phone. I'm thinking, but I'm crying. That's the last thing I want to do is like, get your phone, get your phone. So I did. I picked it up. This is trust again. Picked up the phone, didn't know what I was doing, just punching in. And I can't even tell you what I did that day. I ended up in this biblical reading site. God knows how I got there. And I read this story and I just knew this was it. And I read it and I read it and I read it. The quickest way to say this, the story was, can't think even of their names now, the true biblical names. It was the father who got his message through the night to surrender his child, his only son. And he had to take him to the top of the mountain and sacrifice him. The father plea bargained all the way. 3 days it took him. Each time he went to a step, plea bargained, you can't do this. No, I will do anything else. Anything else you want me to do, I will do. My will, not yours. Okay, no, you must take him. but all the way, but the higher he got, the more he went into it, the more he went within, the more he was surrendering in that chat, like I just did. And I could see these analogies and mirrors coming back to me in this discussion. And then as he got to the top, this father then actually saw the altar at the top and just said, okay, pretty much what I'd said, whatever be will be. I trust enough. I trust in you enough. I trust in the highest good enough that it is what it is, and I will love all, and I love you, and I will allow this to take place because this isn't about me. And then with that surrender in the story, then God comes down to him and said, I never wanted to sacrifice your son. I was testing you on your ability in faith and trust to me. And that moment, it was just this overwhelming knowing that from that moment forth, my level of faith, trust, and surrender shifted absolutely. And I revisited everything in every way and gained in that ever present knowing that this was all okay. And I had to keep walking that journey, whoever and whatever presented. And we will all have those moments. We will have big, big initiations and rites of passage with faith and trust. We'll have smaller ones, but we will all be tested, not by anybody, but by our higher self, because the game is that we're not going to reclaim the truth of all we really are without, we've said, we will do this walk to remember.
Mm.
And so we're imposing these amazing tests with these beautiful co-creators, whoever they be, however they arrive, simply for that greater opportunity of understanding us more and finding that depth of faith and trust within us that takes us into that next quantum leap and that next aspect of consciousness that we're here to evolve into.
And you've most likely been at a point in your life where you've realized that trust is one of the most challenging places to find yourself in. And it's definitely something that, you know, a lot of my clients will share with me. Oh, but that I don't know if I can do that. And, you know, I feel like this is one of Marie and I's greatest gifts, because we have been challenged so much in our trust in our life that we present it with absolute certainty. You can't hide your truth now. So when we say trust, we're not just saying trust without having walked that truth ourselves. Yeah. We're saying trust because, you know, we know that that's what is called for in this very moment. And one of my
walk those shoes.
That's right. And one of my favorite ways that to share it is, you know, with the parent, because I will often get, like, you know, I had another one just this week where the parents come in with the baby, the new baby, 4-week-old baby. I don't want to do anything with this baby and give it love. I don't want to put anything in it. I don't want to. So here I am. And they weren't necessarily choices that they had allowed themselves previously, you know, whether or not they were happy to pop a Panadol here and there, or whether they were happy to just follow conventional protocols. You know, it wasn't a journey that was, it became a catalyst in them until they were holding this new little one in their arms. And so, you know, the conversation that I quite often have with these parents is, well, that's all very good, but where do you think you'd be at in this circumstance? Because I really, as a practitioner, always need to meet you where your fear is. Because at the end of the day, you're really only as strong as your fear in that given moment. So at 2 a.m, where do you think your fear would be in this point? And what do you think you'd do? And it's one of my favorite conversations to have with parents, because it really puts them in that moment right there before they have to be thrust into it and the Band-Aid ripped off, to know what they're going to, like, potentially what they would do in that circumstance. And I've had many of my clients then, you know, turn around, because then my take home from that usually is with them, okay, well, you know, then you either need to educate, gain the support, whatever it is that you feel like you need to be able to walk yourself through those moments when you're in that fear. And sometimes when we're in that fear, we don't have the capabilities of resolving it all on our own. I'm not saying that when I phoned a friend the other day, aka Marie, I wasn't saying that I was in my fear, but I just wanted to chat with her because, again, like I've always sort of known who my nearest and dearest are that aren't going to buy into the story. You know, I've got another friend where I used to have to, don't have to do this anymore. I used to have to say to her before any conversation, all right, can you just take your regular human hat off? I'm about to share something that I don't really feel like coming on. I don't really feel like you coming on the story with me. Okay. Whereas I know with Marie, I'm never going to get a story alignment. I'm always going to get, okay, well, have you looked at it from this angle? Have you looked at it from that angle? And, you know, could it, you know, have you aligned it with, like, where is your heart here? And it's the truth. You know, we can't always in different situations where different things are being raised that are very full on, we can't always like find it within ourselves. But it's important to have, as we've done previous many episodes, some tools that you've got in place to draw on in that moment. And that's another reason why we talk about these tools so much. You know, I've spoken about the breath not being an automatic pilot for me when I'm in a situation where I'm feeling overwhelmed or feeling all the feels of some of my previous things coming up. But the thing that will always get me there is sage. So the sage is like enough for me to remember, oh, that's right, I can breathe. And then that might get me to, you know, a place where I can maybe just sit down and have a glass of water, which then centers my heart, and then boom, I'm there. So, you know, you have to know what that thing is. And that's what I mean when I'm encouraging parents. What is your thing in that? If health isn't your thing, you know, if something goes on with my toilet, I call a plumber. And if the plumber says, oh, no, this whole thing is going to need replaced, it's going to be a very rare thing where I'd be like, oh, let me just get a second opinion. I'm going to be like, well, let's do this. Because, yeah, I can see and I you know, you can trust. I feel like I can trust you. But, you know, if I did get a different plumber, then most likely they might tell me something slightly different or in a different way. It's just whether or not I'm actually trusting in that given moment.
Yeah.
And so therefore having that support around you until you can get that support within yourself is the key. And we
absolutely
talked about this in many different ways as well, where, you know, we've definitely observed over the years how you know, the previous new age circle didn't necessarily have to walk their talk in order for them to preach the speech. And now you kind of see that straight away. It's like I had a new client yesterday, and, you know, she was like, within 10 minutes, she'd shared something with me that she'd shared with two other people in her entire life. And, you know, at the end of the conversation, I said, well, why did you share that with me? And she said, because I trust you. And I'm like, why do you trust me? She was like, she couldn't give me an answer. But I said, could it possibly be because, you know that I'm actually walking my truth and walking a truth and walking in alignment with a high frequency. You know, and it wasn't to toot my own horn or anything like that. It was literally, you know, recognizing another frequency that you can align to.
Yeah, I absolutely would agree to that, in the fact that, you know, the same with me, and I think any of you practitioners out there too, who are just coming from your heart and your truth. You know, for me, there's no greater barrier break of someone learning and gaining your trust by you just being you, but, you know, to be your authentic self, to share like we're doing, to share that, you know, we're you. We're just doing it differently. We're just doing it earlier. We're doing it the same. It doesn't matter. But, you know, we're all here to wake up. And I've always found, and I'm just a teacher, that I don't teach anything unless I've walked it, unless I experience it. I've said this before. I haven't done certificates. I haven't done courses. I haven't done anything like that. I'm not detracting from any of that. But my journey has been go within, go within, go within for the role that I obviously have to be and do, and you know, who I meet. But how I've always taught is through my experience, through my truth, and it comes with that truth. And I've always been very on top of listening to where ego is and saying, no, you don't have a voice through this. It's not about that. Have I had ego? Yeah, hell yeah. God, biggest ego walk on the planet. But, you know, in the teaching aspect, I've learned how to calm that and how to see where it wants to get in and to say, no, that's not opportune. But in that truth that you offer, and from that heart space of love and truth, which what love is, it's truth, people feel that. They don't hear it necessarily. They'll get that through here, but people feel we're all vibrational beings, first and foremost. And we have to keep knowing this now. You're a soul first, your energy first, your physical second. So your heart will always feel the truth. You will always feel it from someone, and you'll know it. You'll know it intuitively. You'll just feel that within you. There's a part of you that will have no doubt around that. You might not understand it, but there's a part of you that just goes, yeah, okay, I get that. And then there'll be parts that you don't. Take on those parts that you receive. Learn to tune to those parts that you receive that you know, because this is where you start to learn to have the faith and trust, not in anybody else, but in you. You know, we have to have it in us first, not in other people. You know, it's these other people are showing us the path back to the faith and trust in us. And that's the path we're on, to really discover, because that's the way home to who we really are and to those higher frequencies, because that's what they call us and what they represent. And I just want to throw in here to not to be confused, because I think this can be a confusion time for someone. This is an old spiritual thing too, and it's still out there. This aspect of being positive and thinking, okay, well, maybe that trust is I'll be positive and I'll put my positive energy out there and I'll say, yes, this is going to happen. And, yeah, I'm going to make that happen. But the true, as we've sort of talked about, that true faith and trust isn't positivity. Elements of the energies of positivity, yes. But this is that discernment again of being honest to yourself, as Martine said to her clients. Am I believing what I'm telling myself? Am I believing that I am doing the best to surrender here, or I'm going within and I'm doing the best to listen? Or am I just hopeful that I'm doing it and it's more intellectualized, that I'm just in my head about this, yeah, I've got to do this and I'm just going to aim for that, but there's still a part of you that knows that you're not fully on board the train? That's where it won't work, because this is where you're being asked to listen to the truth of what you're really saying and projecting and putting out there. And you can do that. They're great learning tools, and you'll learn. I can tell you now, you will. But through that learning, whatever comes back and you know that it hasn't worked or it hasn't been how you want, or you get hit with the fish or whatever it is, that you've hit the brick wall, these are the moments to come and self-reflect. They're the moments to say, okay, not like, oh, what happened out there, or they didn't deliver, or he didn't and she didn't, and we project out there again, or God didn't, or whatever source name you want to give it. But to come back to saying, hang on a minute, I have to take ownership and responsibility for me. What is it in me that I might have said or thought that I knew was there, but I wasn't listening to, or I was trying to think, oh, I'm hopeful that might, it might work without me doing that. The journey is we have to do that. It's all about that, just being willing to come back to self. And whatever you hear, just avoid the judgment. Avoid judgment as best you can. And again, if you're stuck, like Martine said, we're here. Throw us a line, throw us a question. If you're a client, great, give us a shout, whatever. Or if you've got your support team, those people that you can trust, that aren't going to just exaggerate your wound or play into your story, or give you that sympathy vote to continue the story. You are wanting those people, as hard as it might be, and you might want to not run there straight away, but you are ultimately needing those people who will bring the truth to you, to say with love, have you thought of it like this, or what about this option? Because they're the ones that will steer you out of the old patterns that you want to break the loop from.
And if there's something that a full moon or a portal or a high energy date or day can teach you, it's about listening in that given moment. It's about listening in this very moment. And Marie and I have spoken about this in a previous episode as well, where you get those little inklings during the day to sit down. You get those little inklings to meditate. You get those little inklings to take a moment. This is what I feel like accelerates your journey. When you start to listen to those moments, when you start to heed, you begin to trust more and more. It's like these are the 2 millimeter moves that make the grand gesture of this one trust that happened as an event really hit home. I feel like you trusting that, yes, I sat down for 10 minutes and whoa, if I hadn't sat down, I wouldn't have got that. Interesting that you mentioned, Marie, about really remembering that you are you and there's no one else like you, and that is your mission, and that is who, without you being you, without you showing up as you, then it's like you're not actually doing the job that you're put here to do, if that
Well,
makes
that's
sense.
right. Yeah, you're not authentic.
That's right.
Don't try to be something.
No.
Allow yourself to be you. Embrace
And
every
so
bit of
last
you.
night I got this message really clearly to sit down and pick some bushflower cards, like the Australian bushflower cards, but for everybody involved in this Addie handover. So I was picking them for Skylar, I was picking them for the chickens, I was picking them for Isla, I was picking them for me. And they were perfect, absolutely perfect. The one that I picked out the day before for Addie was about rejection. And so we worked together on that day around her knowing within her heart center that nothing that was about to occur over the coming days was anything about the rejection of her. The next card that came up last night, alongside many other perfect synchronizing cards, I picked 4 for each of us, was to be herself, to remember that if she honors herself, then she'll always be in alignment. And I just thought that was perfect. So again, I just worked on that frequency. And like Marie said, I worked on it with unconditional love. I worked on it without, oh, I hope she never feels so wounded that she can't feel herself to be herself. I didn't have any of that. I just did it with this absolute unconditional love that, here, Addie, beautiful soul in my arms, remember the one job that you have is to be yourself. Off into the world now,
Yeah.
And again, it didn't stop me from coming in and out of tears today, and didn't stop me from being a bawling mess on the side of the road as we departed the shelter. But I'm also completely at peace with feeling whatever emotions are happening for me right now. And I already had a little interesting moment again around that process of grief. I had that little voice come in and go, remember that this is going to happen for the next few days. You're going to feel, that wave of grief, and that is okay. Feel the grief. And the two parallels where you're okay with the outcome of something and feeling the feels of the grief, they're not like different energies, like one's up here and one's down here. They're both here. They're just in a
opposite ends.
Yeah.
Opposite ends of the same vibration.
That's right. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, it's really quite amazing. I'm just going, because it's perfect timing too, and excuse me while I just look it up, but I put a post up on the Facebook page today, which I think just fits in really nicely with today too, if you haven't looked, and it doesn't matter if you haven't. But I can't remember it straight off my head, so I'm just quickly scanning. But it's really perfect for this moment. So I'm just going to read it. And it's just this picture of this feminine woman, and she's blowing out all these beautiful things. It says, your soul already knows the answer. You just have to be quiet enough to hear it and brave enough to listen.
Oh, that's it. That's beautiful.
That is it. And I just wrote on there, be still and know. But that's the simplicity of what this walk's about. And that sums it up for me, that, as I said right in the beginning, you are everything. There is nothing you don't know. No one is better or less than any of us. We are all one. We are all of the same, and we are all of the infinite source. And it's just the journey of how you've chosen to awaken, how you choose to not, or to walk, how accelerated that may be, whether you resist or not. Again, it doesn't matter, because you're all part of the one. You already are that. There's nothing that you're less than, and there's nothing that you need. Because anytime you think you need something, is you sending yourself the message that I don't have it and I'm not it. And that's not truth. Ever. And so it's learning to break the patterns, learning to just know where something is in your vibrational field, your thought form, be it known, unknown, deeply unknown. Start here about how you can just tweak that. Tweak that now. And as you tweak it, like Martine just said a minute ago, when we take those little steps forward and you might just sit down when you listen. I mean, what do you do when you receive in that moment, or you just take it and you feel better? You feel joyous. So what's that gift and what's the wisdom that you've just shown yourself is you've just shown heart energy of love, joy, excitement, gaining something, and it makes you smile. Well, that's as good as you can get. Like, accept the little things and the big things. And I know in this journey, many of us think, oh, it's got to be something big, or it's got to be something out there, or we've got to know all this stuff. No, 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 no. For me, really, as I've done all that and I've come the full circle loop, and I feel like I'm coming right back into such a simplistic space of my beingness now, that the simplest smile, the simplest just sense of peace, or just the tiniest thing that I see that gives me joy is magnificent.
Mm.
And that permeates every cell. A simple smile on your face, the cells that are reactive to that far outweigh you sitting in a group for an hour, that you might pretend you're getting something and you don't, and you're telling yourself, oh, I didn't get it. Go out and just sit and look at a flower. Just sit with your animal, your loved one, whatever, for 5 seconds, and it might be the joy of a child, or the plant that just blooms or blossoms, or something that happens to you in the day. And it's so simple, but man, that gives you more than reading a book will. Look at the difference to how you receive. Like, how do you finish doing something that you're trying to do, to gain what you think you want to gain or know, as opposed to something so simple that you're taking for granted, but that is giving you so much more, that because it's not in the bigger picture where you thought it should be, you overlook it. And this brings in that beautiful gratitude thing again as well, and learning to have faith and trust that everything you need is right now. And in that piece, everything you need, you are now. And the only way to find that is you have to stop to listen, to be still, and to dare to go within and see what that is for you.
And remember that every part of you that doesn't sit well with things is just because it's an uncomfortable, like, irresolution within your own soul being that is ready to be transformed and transmuted into a love frequency.
Yeah.
And with that, I would like to dedicate this beautiful episode to Addie. May you continue your journey with unconditional love, emanating that joy unto all who come into with you. And thank you so much for your teachings with us, Addie. We love you so much. Thank you. Thank you for teaching us trust.
And she is.
Until next time.
Yes, until next time, I feel. Please, if you need us, you know where we are. Don't hesitate at all. If there's one thing, it's good to walk your path alone, but if you're struggling and if you're in the pothole, it's nothing, it's no detriment, it's no negativity to you to put your hand out for help. And that might be breaking a really old pattern too.
That's often breaking an old pattern.
Huge. Allow yourself to receive. Okay.
Till next time, big love.
Big love to all. Big love to you. Take care today.
Thank you.
All right. Talk soon. Bye.